Part 1. The Departure, Whisper of the Desert Wind. No one really knew why Ethan Graves disappeared. To the people of Sedora, a small coastal city nestled at the edge of the vast Araka Desert, Ethan was always the same. Quiet, dependable, slightly strange. He worked as a restorer of ancient maps at the local museum, often found squinting under the flickering lamp, with sand-dusted scrolls spread across his desk like sleeping serpents. But the truth is, Ethan was already disappearing long before. He left. Every day his footsteps grew quieter, his voice more distant, and the smile that once curled naturally on his face had become a rare visitor, like rain in the dunes. Then, on a crisp morning in early March, he left a single note on his kitchen table. "I'm heading into Araka, don't look for me." No one did. Ethan didn't go into the desert for adventure. He wasn't chasing treasure or following rumors of ancient civilizations lost beneath the sand. He was chasing silence, real silence. The kind that isn't just the absence of noise, but the presence of something older, deeper, something sacred. In the weeks before his departure, he'd felt it growing, the weight of not knowing who he was anymore. The city, his work, his relationships, they had all become mirrors reflecting versions of himself he no longer recognized. And so, with a second-hand rucksack and a tent meant for weekend campers, he stepped into the golden jaws of Araka. It was said that no one ever crossed the Araka Desert alone and returned unchanged. Some never returned at all. The first 3 days were strangely gentle. The sand beneath his boots was soft and warm, rising like ocean swells in the afternoon heat and whispering under starlight. His feet ached, but his spirit was lit with something raw, something close to freedom. He wrote in a small notebook at night. Day 3. The silence here is a kind of music. I feel like the world is listening. Or maybe I'm finally learning how to speak to it. He pitched his tent beside rock outcrops, shaded his eyes with a scarf and rationed water carefully. He had studied wind patterns, mapped ancient caravans, and memorized constellations. But no book could prepare him for the emptiness that stretched past the horizon, or the strange sense that someone or something was always watching. Part 2. Mirage and Memory. Ghosts beneath the sand on. The 6th day, Ethan saw a man. He was sitting cross-legged on a dune, wrapped in flowing indigo cloth, staring into the sun as if it were a fire. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't seen another soul since leaving Sedora. As he climbed the ridge, the figure vanished. Just like that. No footprints, no shadow, nothing but the wind. That night, he dreamed of a boy lost in the desert, calling out to a father who never answered. The voice in the dream sounded like his own. When he woke, there were tears on his cheeks. Ethan began to understand something. The desert wasn't just a place, it was a mirror. One that reflected not your face, but your deepest forgetting. Memories surfaced in strange flashes. His mother's song, soft and broken. His father's silence after the divorce. The way his hands trembled the day he almost jumped from the bridge outside town but didn't. He had buried these things under years of quiet routine, but in Araka, there was nowhere left to hide. Day 9. I met someone today. Or maybe it was a mirage. Maybe it was me. His water was running low. Blisters split across his feet. The sun had grown cruel, but still, he walked. He told himself he wasn't walking towards something anymore. He was walking through something. Part 3. Trial of the Sun, the Fire. Within. The sun had changed. It was no longer a celestial presence drifting above. It was now a predator. An unblinking, burning eye that seemed intent on devouring Ethan whole. His skin peeled in thin flakes despite the scarf he used to shield his face. His lips cracked. His water was almost gone. By day 12, he'd stopped counting the distance. Landmarks blurred, shadows moved with deceitful grace, and the horizon no longer promised arrival, only endlessness. Even the notebook he had clung to for a sense of control now lay forgotten in his pack. The desert didn't want stories, it wanted surrender. And still, he walked. That evening, just before twilight bled across the dunes, Ethan collapsed beside a dead tree, its twisted limbs like the fingers of a dying god, reaching upward for rain that never came. He lay on his back, gasping, and whispered, "If there's anyone listening." "I'm not here to conquer you, I just want to understand." Silence answered, but not the peaceful silence of the first nights. This was something heavier, a silence so vast it pressed against his ribs and threatened to pull him inward, to erase him. Like the desert was asking, "Who are you beneath your name, beneath your past, beneath everything you thought was you?" He didn't know. He realized he never had. That night, fever took hold. In the throes of half-dream, half-delirium, he saw his younger self, the boy with scraped knees and a telescope, the boy who believed the stars had secrets meant only for him, the boy who was silenced by the cold war of his parents' divorce and the quiet humiliation of always being the weird one. The boy asked him, "When did you stop believing I was enough?" Ethan tried to answer, but his throat cracked like dry wood. When morning came, he did not rise. Instead, he listened to the wind, to the rustling grains of sand that seemed to chant an ancient rhythm. In that stillness, he felt something shift. He stopped resisting, stopped pretending he had control over the journey, stopped thinking survival was the only measure of success, and in that surrender, he felt the first drop of peace. A tear rolled down his cheek. As the sun climbed once more, less brutal than before, Ethan gathered the last of his strength. He stood, trembling, leaning on a stick he'd carved days ago. But he was no longer walking out of stubbornness or pride. He was walking because something had been reborn inside him. Not strength, not clarity, but honesty. For the first time, he no longer needed to be anyone, he just needed to be. Part 4. The Sand Temple. Meeting the Inner Guardian. It was on the 15th day, just as the winds began to howl like ancient spirits mourning the forgotten, that Ethan saw it. Rising from the dunes like a mirage carved from time itself stood a stone structure, partially swallowed by the sand. It looked like the remnants of an ancient temple built not by hands seeking praise, but by souls seeking silence. There were no grand pillars, no statues of gods, just a single archway, standing firm against the wind, etched with weathered symbols that shimmered faintly in the sun. Ethan stood still, unsure if this was real or just another fever-born illusion. But something within him whispered, "Go inside." He crossed the threshold without hesitation. Inside, the light shifted. The world turned quieter than quiet. No echoes, no breath, no sound of sand, only stillness, a stillness that pressed into the bones. The air smelled of stone, salt, and memory, and there, at the center of the temple, sat a figure in robes, face hidden beneath a hood, not moving, not breathing. Ethan approached cautiously, but before he could speak, the figure raised a hand, and a voice, not spoken aloud but heard within, rang out. "You have walked far, Ethan Graves. What have you come to leave behind?" He felt his knees weaken. "My fear," he whispered. "Your fear is only a mask," the voice replied. "What lies beneath it?" Ethan took a breath. The words came not from his lips, but from his soul. "My need to be understood. My hunger to be someone. My addiction to being seen." The figure nodded. Silence followed. A deep silence that stripped away every layer of performance Ethan had ever worn. No more roles, no more names, no more expectations. Then the voice came, again. "And what will you carry with you should you survive this desert?" Ethan hesitated. For the first time he realized he had the answer. "Gratitude. For every moment I forgot myself. And for every moment that helped me remember the foe." Figure lifted its hood. Ethan gasped. He was looking at himself, but not the man he was now, not the weary, weathered traveler. This version of Ethan radiated serenity, a face unburdened by striving, eyes that no longer sought approval. This was the man he could become if he continued walking, not outward, but inward. And then, as suddenly as it began, the temple vanished. He found himself lying in the sand once more, back where he had collapsed days earlier. But something had changed. His water bottle, once empty, now had enough for one more day. A strange wind circled him like a gentle guardian, and in the distance the faint silhouette of a green valley shimmered beyond the dunes. He smiled. "I thought I came here to escape," he whispered, "but really I came to return." Part 5. The Oasis of Return. Rebirth. Beyond the dunes, the morning was unlike any other. There was a softness in the wind, a kind of sacred hush, as if the desert itself had exhaled, releasing Ethan from its trial. The sun no longer felt like a judge overhead, but a warm companion, rising with gentleness, casting long golden shadows across the dunes. Ethan's steps were slow, yet deliberate. His body ached, but his heart was still. Each grain of sand beneath, his boots felt familiar now, not hostile, not endless, but part of something ancient and wise. And then he saw it. Not a mirage, not a trick of light, but a true oasis cradled in the arms of the dunes like a jewel hidden away from the unworthy. Palm trees swayed in the breeze. Water glistened in a clear pool, reflecting the sky like a sacred mirror. Birds chirped softly from branches. Life had bloomed here silently and without audience. Just as Ethan had, he knelt by the water's edge and stared into his own reflection, but the man looking back was no longer the map restorer of Sedora. This man's eyes were steady, unafraid of emptiness. His face was thinner but also clearer, like stone weathered into something timeless. He drank, slowly, reverently, and for the first time in what felt like 1,000 years, he wept. Not from despair or confusion or pain, but from a deep, soul-level release. "I made it," he whispered, not to boast but to honor the parts of himself he'd buried. "And I'm not the same." Ethan stayed at the oasis for 3 days. He bathed. He slept under the stars. He listened to the wind. Tell him stories he hadn't heard before, the kind that come only after silence has carved a space inside you. He spoke to no one because there was no need. The conversation was inward now, and it was finally honest. On the 4th morning, he rose before dawn. He packed lightly, no longer burdened by the need to carry his past with him. He looked one last time at the place that had given him rebirth, and then turned toward the north where the outline of Sedora shimmered faintly in the far distance. He walked not to return as who he was, but to live as who he had become. Epilogue: The man who listened to the sand. When Ethan returned to Sedora, he spoke little of his journey. People asked, of course, about the danger, the heat, the hallucinations. He only smiled and said, "I didn't go to find something. I went to lose what wasn't me." He returned to his quiet life, but with new eyes. He still restored maps, but now with the understanding that the most important map is the one we draw inward, through pain, surrender, and silence. And sometimes on clear nights when the wind was just right, Ethan would walk to the edge of the dunes, place his hand on the sand and whisper, "Thank you for showing me who I was," by stripping away everything I wasn't, and the desert, in its timeless wisdom, would whisper back, "You were never lost, only buried."